And circling back to one of our top stories, Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping preparing for the high-stakes summit in Beijing. That meeting being closely watched worldwide as it could have major ramifications for the global order.
Yeah, trade, tech, and rare earths, they are high on the agenda with more than a dozen executives from the world's largest companies traveling with the American leader. But the war in Iran and restrictions over the Strait of Hormuz could overshadow talks.
Resolving the war in the Middle East is in the interests of both leaders. Mr. Trump said yesterday he will be seeking to open China's market to American businesses.
And tariffs on Chinese products have been a key source of friction between the two superpowers. The U.S. leader arrived in Beijing last night, marking the first visit by an American leader in nearly a decade.
For more on the significance of the summit and what we can expect out of it, let's speak with Dr. Bates Gill, Senior Fellow at the National Bureau of Asian Research. She joins us from Ashland, Oregon. Dr. Gill, good to see you. So, the presidents, Trump and Xi, heading into this summit, feeling extremely confident. We know both have few constraints institutionally or personally. Both want to shape the future of U.S.-China ties. So what do you think is going to be the likely outcome when these two gladiators, in a manner of speaking, come face to face?
Well, I think we have to say that if there is no great outcome, that's still a great outcome. What I mean, of course, is that when these two major powers, the two most powerful countries on Earth, are able to sit down and at least have a conversation with each other, that's a positive. But I suspect there will be some important outcomes. Certainly, President Trump wants to come back with something he can boast about, talk about. There will probably be some increases in Chinese imports of American goods. There may well be some discussion of possible investments by China in the United States. There's been talk of an establishment of a board of trade and investment where the two can talk about those sectors that are less sensitive and find ways to improve their trade relationship. Those are pretty minor developments, but nonetheless, I think positive overall in maintaining the stability for the relationship.
And even with Mr. Trump now in Beijing, Dr. Gill, the leverage still looks fragmented on many issues from trade to tech. It's very fashionable around lots of circles to ask who has the upper hand overall. But really, should we stop asking that and instead read this summit issue by issue?
Well, I do think it's an interesting parlor game, I suppose, to discuss who has the upper hand. And the fact is that both leaders have certain advantages in their hand, but they also are facing some difficulties and may be weaker in some situations. The key point, I think, though, is that both have a general agreement on certain of these big issues. And one is, of course, to stabilize the trade relationship. That's something they ought to be able to maintain and carry forth throughout the rest of this year. And of course, with regard to the war in Iran, both leaders have an interest in seeing that war settled. They may have different views about how that gets done, but I think they can find common ground on that. I don't think there's going to be any particular breakthrough that we see as a result of the two talking with one another. And in fact, recent news that just came out with the New York Times that China may be considering some weapon shipments to Iran could actually upset that apple cart. So we'll just have to wait and see whether or not the two countries really come to any kind of agreement or understanding about the future of the war in Iran.
Dr. Gill, this is the part that confuses me. I mean, what China is doing, if you like, about pressuring Tehran. I mean, it almost seems like the situation with North Korea. China has the influence in the view of the United States, doesn't really do all that much. It seems to be a similar situation right now. I mean, I'd like to get your view on that.
I think you're probably right that China has significant leverage in some cases with the Iranian leadership, primarily, of course, as Iran's principal export destination for its petroleum. But, the assumption there is that China wishes to make that leverage felt. And China has traditionally always been quite cautious in this sort of diplomatic pressure on countries that it wants to maintain a good relationship with, like North Korea or Iran. And so while there will be subtle efforts, and I think we can see that there were some pressures made in Tehran, for example, to at least agree to the ceasefire now more than a month ago. China exercised some influence there. But it's going to stop short from sticking its head above the parapet, shouldering responsibility for trying to come up with a resolution and risk the possibility that all of that just tumbles in a heap and ends up being embarrassing. So, yes, there's influence, but reluctant to use it, I think, in Beijing.
I want to ask you also, Dr. Gill, about the delegation that Trump has with him. Over a dozen CEOs, the likes of Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Jensen Huang, Boeing is there as well. They span, a broad range of industries: chips, space, planes, soybeans, finance. I mean, what does that tell us about the Trump administration's economic priorities?
Well, I think it tells us at least two important things. First of all, this is precisely the sort of entourage that President Trump would want to have surrounding him. He's seen it done by other major world leaders bringing their business titans along on these trips in the hopes of then delivering on major economic breakthroughs. So first, I think it's the optics that's critical for President Trump. And then secondly, yes, I think he's demonstrating to President Xi that he's serious. Trump is serious about wanting to try to stabilize the economic relationship and cut some deals. That's what President Trump likes to do. And this sort of gathering of American business leaders is precisely designed to try to come away from the meetings with some major deals, major benefits for American companies, especially at a time when President Trump's popularity is plummeting, owing primarily to the declining economic situation in the United States.
And it's time to talk about Taiwan, Dr. Gill. It isn't physically in the room, but it's very much part of this agenda. Short of any formal U.S. policy change, what would Beijing see as a win on this, even a subtle shift in Washington's posture?
I think you're right that we're unlikely to see a major change in the traditional phrasing, the traditional framing of the American approach to the relationship between China and Taiwan. Nevertheless, if it comes to light, for example, that President Trump and President Xi actually discussed American arms sales to Taiwan, that in itself would be a major shift that has been traditionally off the table. U.S. governments, do not wish to enter into any kind of discussion or negotiation over this question with their Chinese counterparts. That might be a change. The Chinese, of course, would love to see the president voice some subtle change in language. For example, rather than saying not supporting Taiwan independence, use American language that it opposes or is against Taiwan independence. I don't think that is going to come through. But I think the strategy on the Chinese part is to steadily, with almost 3 more years of the Trump administration to go, steadily see if it can whittle away at the American position and gain some advantage in its relationship toward Taiwan.
Understood. Dr. Gill, we leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us. And a quick reminder that summit taking place in just over 2 hours from now between Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping. Dr. Bates Gill, meantime, is Senior Fellow at the National Bureau of Asian Research. Thank you so much once again.